Hi, I'm William Spaniel. Let's learn about international relations. Today's topic is diversionary war. The question we're interested in addressing here is how can leaders exploit informational asymmetries for their own benefit? Let's think about what leaders know versus what you know. Governments tend to be better informed about international affairs than their citizens. If you live in the United States, think about this for the moment. Think about what the CIA knows that you don't know versus what you know that the CIA doesn't know. Obviously, there are going to be some things that the CIA doesn't know that you know. For example, you know what you had for breakfast, and hopefully the CIA doesn't know. But in terms of things that are actually important, like what's going on internationally, who has weapons, who's constructing weapons, that sort of thing, the CIA really does have you beat. And it's advantageous to keep that secret information, well, a secret. If you knew what was going on, if you knew where this chemical weapons laboratory was being constructed, then it's really hard for the CIA to keep that information a secret to just you and not have that information be spread to the rest of the world, including to the people who are actually constructing this chemical weapons lab that we might want to get destroyed. Now, this is a problem, though, because if information is kept secret like this, and it's probably a good thing that it is, there's a downside, which is that the information secrecy can lead to exploitation. So I want you to pretend you're a leader for a moment and imagine that your economy is really screwed, or you're just a terrible leader and you can't craft domestic policy worth a damn. Well, maybe you might want to fight a diversionary war to distract people from this. You want to create a diversion. If you create an international crisis to distract everyone from this, then people are not going to judge you based off of your inability to control the economy or your inability to create domestic policy, but rather perhaps your ability to handle international crises. If things go well for you in an international crisis, then that's great for you. Even if it was very unlikely that this was actually going to be successful, the people don't know whether you're going to be successful or not. They don't have any good expectations whether you're going to be successful or not. That's something that only you have. And so even if you're very unlikely to prevail, if you do prevail, then that's great for you because now you look really competent. On the other hand, if things go poorly, and it's very likely they will, hey, you were screwed anyway, so no big deal, right? And the couple of examples that we see being discussed in this vein. First, the Falklands War. This is something that you might not know about if you hadn't been around in 1982 when they were fought. But this war took place between the United Kingdom and Argentina. Argentina at the time was ruled by a military government. United Kingdom at the time, Margaret Thatcher was prime minister. This Argentinian military government was really terrible at running the economy, and things were looking pretty poor there. And so what the government decided to do was to invade the Falkland Islands, which is right here on the map. These islands, Argentina had always claimed to be their own, but the United Kingdom had controlled them for basically all of time. You can see that they're actually very far away from the United Kingdom, but very close to Argentina. So Argentina sent some troops over to take them back for themselves, or at least they claimed that they were recapturing them for Argentina. And this, of course, provoked a response from the United Kingdom. Margaret Thatcher sends troops down, and eventually the United Kingdom recaptures the Falkland Islands. But at least for a time in Argentina, there was a very strong nationalist sentiment, I'll say it right, a very nationalist sentiment within Argentina. And so this did have some good effects for the Argentinian government, even though it ended up being very bad. Now, more recently, and perhaps more politically charged, was the Iraq War, where opponents of the Iraq War will tell you that this was a diversionary tactic from the Bush administration to distract the American public from actual domestic policy. Bush had really shown himself to be a good leader, or a good, strong leader during the 9/11 crisis. And so a lot of people thought that, hey, this is just Bush trying to extend this era of foreign policy being the predominant issue of the day. And the picture I have right there on your screen is Colin Powell talking in the United Nations about Iraq's alleged chemical weapons program. Now, obviously this didn't turn out very well, and that's interesting, but this is just one explanation that this was a diversionary tactic from the Bush administration. I don't want to make this politically charged. And in fact, in a later lecture, I'll give you a reason why some claim that this Iraq war wasn't actually a mistake after all, and this was actually optimal for the United States to fight. So withhold judgment on that for a moment. In any case, diversionary war is a war fought to divert attention from a politically unpopular area to the international arena. So that's your definition of diversionary war. Why might this work? Well, again, people can't see through the diversion, right? There's this information asymmetry where people in a country might want to support the war if the conditions for war are favorable. This is going back to the Iraq example. This is a great example from the Iraq case where the United States, people in the United States actually wanted to go and fight Saddam Hussein because they thought that Saddam Hussein was in fact constructing these chemical weapons and had a strong nuclear program that was going to produce nuclear weapons eventually, and so we might as well go over there and fight now. The leader is the only one who actually knows what's going on, or at least maybe in the Bush administration they didn't know what was going on, but they thought that they had a better idea what was going on than the people do. And that's true, that, you know, they have access to this sort of military intelligence, so they do know what's going on better than the public. But that also means that if nothing is going on, if there actually isn't a chemical weapons program going on in Iraq, then they can hide that information more readily from the public. And so the leader can exploit this asymmetry in that sort of way. And even if the war turns out to be a disaster, this might not be the end of the world for the leader. Bush was elected in 2004, although on the other hand, Argentina's military government fell after losing the Falklands War. So there's a trade-off there. In either case, going back to our principal agent framework from the last lecture, recall that the principal's inability to monitor the agent can lead to principal agent problems. And here, diversionary war simply highlights the trade-off between needing government secrecy for the benefits of having secrecy and also requiring government accountability. And so this government accountability thing is something that we'll talk about not in the next lecture, but in the lecture after that. So something to keep in mind as we go forward. That wraps up this lecture, and in the next lecture, we're going to talk about something called gambling for resurrection, which is really very similar to what we see in diversionary war, talking about what actually happens as a war is going on and as the leaders decide whether to continue fighting or perhaps seek a settlement. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time when we talk about gambling for resurrection. Take care.